Welcome back to Noviland. It's another beautiful day in paradise. Today I wanted to share with you part 4 of the story of how Kevin Trudeau came into my life and lived with me for an extended period of time back in 2021. Hard to believe 4 years have gone by since that time already. A lot has changed, and I'm excited to be sharing this with all of you. There's been a lot of stories that I've shared a little here and a little there, and it's a blessing to be able to share this with all the people watching out there. So thank you very much for watching, liking, and subscribing. I really appreciate you. You make it worth everything I'm doing. And I'd probably do it anyways, but it's even way better with you guys participating, sharing, commenting. Thank you so much. So there's a lot I wanted to share for part 4. Uh, and it kind of bounces around a little bit, so we'll try to start at the beginning. I talked a lot about winter, and I had one last little story of midwinter to share before we get into the spring. For about 3 weeks in February, we had really harsh weather. Well, Chicago, what do you expect? But for 3 weeks, it was close to zero, and in that 3 weeks, it probably snowed at least 3 feet of snow, which, when it's that cold, it doesn't go anywhere. All the ice and snow, it just keeps building up. So one day, it snows. We had maybe a foot of snow. And, as part of this, I'm in a condo, and so they clean up pretty well, but I still have to clean off my van and around my van. Otherwise, I'm not getting out and I'm not going anywhere. So this is normal for everyone who lives in any snowy climate. It's not a big thing. And I was preparing to go out there and take care of this. Well, Kevin saw that I was doing this and he goes, "Can I do this?" I'm like, "Well, I have no problem. You might want to call to make sure it's okay to walk 15 feet from the door because they have you on GPS and you can't really go anywhere." So he calls and asks, and they said, "Yeah, as long as you stay close and don't go any further, then go back in." So great. So I had one pair of boots. I gave them to Kevin, uh, and he goes outside and he's cleaning off my van and he's having a good time. Well, I wanted to join him. I didn't really have another pair of boots, and I'm looking in my closet and I had these old pair of ski boots. I probably hadn't gone skiing in a decade, and these ski boots and skis I bought back in the 90s, so they were pretty aged. So I managed to get these things on my feet, and while he's cleaning off my van, I'm on the patio building a snowman, which I thought was a lot of fun. And I took a picture. I actually sent it to Dr. Tom, letting him know that we had been productive that day. And then I had a few friends who knew about the situation with Kevin at this time. And so I texted one of my close dear friend, Nikki, who I'd been sharing this information with. And her response was like, "Are you kidding? You got him to clean off your vehicle while you built a snowman? How does that work?" And of course, my response was, "It's good to be the king." In any case, winter cleared up. It got nicer. Spring came on. As time went by, Kevin started becoming more acclimated. A few things that were occurring during this time. One is everyone wanted Kevin to try their products, their supplements, their anti aging products, their energy products, anything they had. They knew Kevin was the guy. And so they would send him anything and everything for free, from the Healy to all sorts of other things that I don't even remember half the names. And he had shelf with like 100 different supplements that he would try out. And so when he gives advice to people on what supplements are good or bad, it's from personal experience because he tried it, he read the labels, he looked to see what it did for himself or what it didn't do, and made a decision based on his own experience and his own knowledge. So it's not just random information he gives out. He really did try all of those things and knows what's good and what's garbage. The other thing is, after the first month and the little ice cream binge wore off, he wanted to get back into working out. Like, yeah, finally, I get to work out with KT. All right, this is the thing. Kevin and I are gonna do these great workouts. Well, he couldn't go anywhere, so the workout was on my living room floor. That's fine. So we would move the table, and for a half hour a night, 5 or 6 days a week, we would work out. I say a half hour because he was trying to, I don't know if dumb it down is the right term, but make it easier for me because I wasn't in quite the shape that Kevin was. So we would start this, and at first he was doing these weird Shaolin movements, and his wrists were going back and forth, and he's jumping around, and he's doing weird things with his arms and legs. And I'm like, I don't think my arms and legs contort like that. They don't do that. But he would slow it down enough for me to kind of follow along and help me out. And I managed to figure out a lot. Uh, then we would kind of get down on the ground, and that was the harder part because we weren't just doing jumpy jacks or weird movements. We were doing burpees and planks and push-ups and sit-ups and other things that are painful, and I don't really want to do at this point in my life. There's other ways for me to work out that are less painful. But for him, it was just he could do hundreds of these. He looks at me and is like, "Let's try to do three." Okay, so I would do three burpees at a time, and we would take a break, and then I would do three more, or we would plank, or do something else, or whatever it's called when you're kind of sitting on the edge of your seat, and you're not really sitting, and you're just kind of pretending you're sitting and holding your whole body up with your weight. That was fun too. And, different kinds of push ups, easy push ups, lazy man push ups, which are more for me. But working out nonetheless. We would do this before dinner, and it was great. It was physical, and there's a few times where I'd be like, everything is hurting too much. Can we have an easier night? And so he would do a yoga night, and I think that was more for me. But he wanted to do some of that too. So we had fun. We started working out. I can't necessarily say the weight came off that I gained that first month with him because we were still eating pretty well. But probably after a few months, he started getting more into cleanses and the colonics. They gave him passes for these things, and he started really playing full on with all this stuff. And his little ice cream binge and eating binge was over. He'd had his fun, and now he was back into being super healthy. But he would still go out and have fun, in between these things. One time he was doing a juice cleanse. That was a 2-week juice cleanse. And I wanted to eat food. I wasn't on the cleanse. He was on the cleanse. And so I asked, I don't have to eat in front of you. I can take this in the other room. I could wait until you're done. No, that's okay. Let's go have dinner together. And so he would be drinking his juice, and I'd have a plate of food. And he would sit there and go, I'm hungry. I'm like, well, whose fault is that? He's like, no, I understand. I made this choice. I'm like, yeah, are you sure it's okay? I'm eating in front of you. He's like, yeah, no, don't stop. Please enjoy your dinner. Uh, and it was just funny because, he's very human, and he's a great guy. And, he gets hungry and cleanses during cleanses like anyone would. It's not, he's not Superman. He's still a human being. But he did a lot of stuff that I was in awe of. And it's very eye opening watching the way he lives and works. Finally, about mid April, he was allowed to get passes to go to a restaurant. Up until this point, other than he was able to do shopping and banking and medical appointments, and not really much else. He had a few other little appointments and different things he was allowed to get passes for. Everything had to be approved, often a week or two in advance. And so it wasn't always easy for him to do this. But finally, he was able to get passes to go out to dinner. And he was able to get several passes. And so uh, Blaine and Dr. Tom and Dr. Ted all came into town. And I think they had a staff meeting during that point somewhere else. But at the same time, Kevin hadn't really made the decision. Am I coming back to gin? Am I going to do this? Could I just retire and go live on a beach? He could have done that. And he wouldn't have had any hassle. He had plenty of friends who wanted to help him out. He never had to work another day in his life. Even though he had no money of his own, he didn't need it. He had helped so many people over the years. He had done so many things. He made so many of his friends millionaires through his training. He didn't need to work. People would have taken care of him for the rest of his life. And he could have easily manifested the money once he was allowed to. Well, that wasn't always so easy because he would they told him you should apply for a job. You're supposed to be working, and so he would send in 3 or 4 jobs, and they would refuse them all. We can't have you this. These are people you know. It's like, well, of course, who's going to hire him? But these are consulting jobs. This is too close to home. He wasn't allowed to consult and be paid for it for Jin or through his friends or Saima or any of that people, any of those things. And all sorts of people wanted to give him these jobs. But that was okay. So finally, he gets these passes to go to dinner. And of course, I went with him. And that was really a fly on the wall experience. So I'm at this dinner. I think the first one was Jameson's Char House. It's one of Blaine Aythorn's favorite places when he came into town. And so I'm there with Tom, Ted, Blaine, Kevin, and me. And mostly I was silent and just enjoying being there, listening to them all talk. This was the first time Kevin had made a real decision that yes, he wants to come back to Jin and see what he could make of the club. And of course, he wasn't allowed until, he was past a certain point, but he could consult for free. He can give his advice. There was nothing wrong with doing that and just giving his time and advice for free and volunteering and donating. So he decided he wanted to do that at this point. His Team Alpha had been going, and he had volunteers who would drive him to his appointments so he didn't have to Uber when he had things. Volunteers would come in and do his filing or do research for him or whatever else he had going. So we're at this dinner, and he's quizzing Blaine and Tom, who were the principal owners of Jin at this point. And Ted was there, and Ted volunteered himself, but he wasn't actually an owner. He was still working with Mortar Health Systems and doing his own thing. And so I remember very specifically a question was asked, because one thing we knew and one thing we could easily see was that the website they had for the Global Information Network at that point was terrible. Like the original one for Jin was this beautiful website where every color, every word, every speck of it had been planned out. The energy, everything had meticulous time put into it. And when he went away, they had to kind of retool things, and they had this cookie cutter website with this horrible logo that said Jin, which looked like something I could have made in junior high art. I did make something like that in junior high art, and this was about the same level. And no one really liked that at the time. But, a lot of us kept the club going because we believed in the club. We believed in its mission, and we were all getting benefit from him. So the club was still going. Dr. Mortar and Dr. Ted had put in, and Blaine Aythorn all had put in a lot of time and a lot of their own money to keep the club going and get it back to a place where it was worth Kevin even coming back to. So the question was asked at dinner, who's in charge of your website? Who's your internet guy? And Kevin, he expected a quick answer. This guy is in charge of it. That didn't happen. What happened was Dr. Tom and Blaine kind of went like this. And I'm sitting there kind of, trying not to smirk and smile, but I knew what was going on, and I could see the look on Kevin's face. It's just like, how come you don't have an answer for me? So finally they came back, and it's like, well, sometimes it's, and I won't give the names to, in case anyone's watching, to make them feel bad about this, but they had about 2 or 3 different people who were doing this, and none of them were actually IT guys or website guys. They were just the people working for the club who decided, this is what I'm going to do. I need to be the person who does this. And so there were no experts, and it was obvious from the website that this was the case. There was no one to really update it. There was no one to make it better. And they just did what they had to do to basically keep the website functioning at this point. And if we ever got new content on it all, that was a blessing. Much less having, events like my retreats or other events on the site. That was also a blessing. So this was very telling because I knew that he was going to be like, wait, what do you mean you don't have a website guy? And it was something like that. But anyway, so the dinner went on. It was a great dinner. We got back just in the nick of time because he was on a time limit with a pass and he had to call in when he was back. He couldn't call in and said, "Oh yeah, I'm back," and they looked on the GPS and like, "No, you're not." He had to actually be there and call in and say, "Okay, my pass is done. I'm back at home," and he did all that. And it was a great experience. I think the next night we went to this Italian place while they were all still in town. Uh, they actually had the meeting, and Kevin was able to zoom in, you know, as a Zoom participant on the staff meeting. I wasn't there for that meeting. I actually wanted to give him privacy. Afterwards, he's like, "You really should have been a fly on the wall for that." But part of my feeling was, I don't really want to be involved in what's going on with the staff because the writing's on the wall for a lot of these people. I can see where this is going, and I don't want them to be mad at me if things don't really work out for them, which ultimately was the case that they had to move on from many of these people and get new people. Not that these people didn't give their time, effort, and I love many of these people who, you know, gave so much of their time and worked for Jin through the lean years. God bless those people. I really love those people. It was what it was, but the club was never going to grow with them working. And ultimately, the question Kevin asked me was, if we let these people go, if they weren't working, do you think any of these people would join the club? None of these people are active members, they're just employees. And I kind of paused myself and go, I don't know. I don't know if they would or not. Well, the answer was no, they wouldn't and they didn't. And right now, Jin is run by members who worked their way up in the ranks, became upper level members, volunteered, put their time in before they were ever interviewed for a job, and proved themselves as being groomed through the club and worthy of the jobs that they were ultimately hired for. And the club is much better off for it. And that and a number of other reasons is why the club is growing right now. But nevertheless, it was a great experience having those dinners. And that was when Kevin first came back to the fold, as we would say, and really made a real decision that he was going to put his time and effort into building Jin, into really seeing what he can make of the club. That was his creation. He founded the club. It was his dream. It's part of a much bigger dream. If you want to learn more about that, he has a vision statement and ship statement. I don't remember if they're on the Guru Kev website or his fan club website or on the Jin website. They're somewhere around there. You could probably look it up and find out for yourself. But they're really extensive visions, far beyond anything I could really talk about in this video. So that was part 4. Looking forward to telling part 5, and it's still getting more exciting. It still gets more exciting, and the best is yet to come. Thank you for being part of this journey. I'm really grateful that you're all here with me. I love you all, and I wish you were here. God bless you.